Alizey, and I'm a painter and printmaker from Charleston, South Carolina. I thought I'd maybe start with an intro post just to tell you a bit about my work, and show you around my studio, and show you some of the stuff I'm working on right now. So how about a studio tour? Alright, so this is actually where I usually paint. A little spot. I just work on the floor most of the time. I find it easier because then I can rest my arms. That way I can get a lot more detail. There's some stuff on the wall. I don't have a lot of room for finished stuff, so especially if it's on paper, I'll just pin it up on the wall. I use my paperwork for inspiration more of the time, so I'm not too precious about it. It's just a little studio. We'll run around. So that's my studio. I share it with a couple other people. Ceiling's kind of cool. It's in the rafters. So this is my resining space. It's mostly just a table. I've covered it with parchment paper. Parchment paper is awesome for resin because it is basically super glue, so parchment's the only thing it won't stick to. And if I want to keep my space tidy, it's the best way to do that. There's some stuff on the wall. So this is my work wall. I have a chair. I actually just moved it for this. This is where I do a lot of my designing, just kind of thinking, hanging out, uploading stuff onto my laptop when I'm done with it. Keep a lot of papers, sketchbooks right here. And then up here is where I keep a lot of my inspiration. It's nice to just take a break and look at something, and so I just keep a lot of the books that I tend to be inspired by. I've got a lot of space books, science books, art books. They're all really useful to me. This is a terribly disorganized thing, but I got that sweet display from work. We discontinued that brand, so I got to take that home. I actually have a few of those things. This is another little display I got when something was discontinued. These two plastic boxes here. I haven't really filled them in yet, but I'm working on it. A couple more things. Here's all my ink. I like to use a combination of ink and powdered pigment in my resin paintings. It's pretty fun. And this is a big box of paint. Some of the mediums I use. I'll go more into depth with them So that was my messy studio. I've had it for about a year. I'm really happy with it. I love working here. I come here pretty much every time I'm done with work. I invite friends over a lot. One of my best friends is actually in the studio right next to mine. It's basically in the same spot. So we'll paint together a lot. So maybe I'll start with showing you some of the stuff I'm working on. This one's the most recent. Quite proud of it. It's called Arterial 1. Arterial refers to like the tiny veins in the arteries, and I drew a lot of those, so I wanted to focus on that. You can see it's got a lot of detail. This was done in a colored gesso birch pen. So this is basically a heart. I used 4 or 5 different images to reference this. I used some images, like actual photos of a heart, which is why it looks more like just the outside. But I also wanted to reference the veins on the inside and the arteries, so it's got some of that detail as well. This is just the colored gesso panel, so it is a birch board, and it comes with this gray background on it. It's already primed, it's already gessoed, and it's really smooth. You don't need to do anything else to it to make it workable. So this was really quick for me. I actually used acrylic markers in a really limited color palette to do it, and then I used India ink markers to do the finer details. And that's a technique I've been doing lately that I really enjoy. The color palette I've been using is a mix of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black or gray. So I find that a really fun way to keep my palette limited while also being able to create a very wide range of colors. So that's the last thing I did. Let's see, what else shall I show you? This is another recent piece in that kind of series. I don't know what to call this series yet. It's all sort of floating body parts and organs. The reason I'm doing organs is just the idea of a disembodied floating organ, especially like one taken out of me after surgery. Not that I've had surgery, but just the thought of it really freaks me out. And I like the idea of creating something beautiful and natural, but also arresting. Because I feel like a lot of the beautiful natural things in the world are things that people don't like to think about because they're kind of scary. So I just like to force people to consider that through images like this. So this has about, you can see the screen. Resin is not fun to photograph at all. It's just so shiny. And it really only works in person. But at least in this video I can move it around so you can see the details. This has a bunch of different layers. They all kind of are in different spots. Essentially what I did was I just drew the image over and over again, using one layer of resin for each color. I poured on a layer of resin, I let it dry, I worked on it using acrylic paint, and then I poured on another layer, let it dry, repeated the process a few times. This is actually one of the newer pieces I'm working on that pops out of the frame. My older pieces, I was just kind of lazy. I didn't really know how to do it either, so I would just build them directly into the frame. So I would pour the resin in here and it would never come out. Basically, it would be a pre-framed piece. But this one is just essentially a plexiglass sheet now. It's just plastic all the way through. Needs more sanding. But the only thing with this is I've noticed when I leave it on its own, because it's not very thick, it'll warp. So either I'm going to thicken it up or I'm just going to install it into that frame right there, which is what I used as a mold. So that's that piece. Oh yeah, this is called Lungs 1. Couldn't think of anything more interesting than lungs. This picture of lungs. And it's called Lungs 1 because I, of course, intend to do another painting of lungs in the future. Oh, and it looks cool in the back, too. It's a totally different painting in the back. I haven't completely decided which side I like more. Probably the front because that is the way I painted it. That's where the detail was meant to go. But the back of it is really pretty. So that's kind of why I want to leave it out of the frame, so I have that option still. Here's a few smaller pieces in that same series that I'm working on. It's going to be called probably Tetrachromia. Tetrachromia as in 4 colors, basically a reference to the limited color palette I'm using, which is sort of the basis of this series. That's what I wanted to concentrate on. I feel like if I limit my colors, I can be a lot freer with my subject matter. So I can do a lot more things with it. And it's just, I felt a little stifled by the stuff I've been working on before because it was very, very detailed and restrictive, and I just wanted to be more creative. So this one is Multifacet 1, I think. It's another little clear one. I'll show you the molds that I do these in another video. So this is just acrylic and epoxy resin. It's about 4 inches by 4 inches. And this was all just one layer. So I poured in the resin, swirled in the paint, and using my little silicone brushes, which are my favorite. I will talk about this later. So this is like, I don't know if you can really see it here, but it's just like a face with sunglasses, another face over here. I like the idea of sort of creating a portrait that's very loose in the sense that it's not necessarily just one portrait, it's a lot of faces together, kind of surreal. This one's Multifacet 2, or 1. I don't remember which one I did first, so It'll say so on my website. I really like this one. The colors in it were really successful, I think. That's the right way up. There's a face here. There's another one over here. All sorts of things going on in here. Oh, and I just want to say, do you see my nails? I had nail polish on all of them this morning, and then I started working in resin. So if you really love painting your nails over and over again, you should think about painting in resin, because acetone will take it off. Here's another sort of figurative one I was doing in that color palette. This one's Untitled, just, I couldn't think of anything to call it. And this one's actually a little warped, so when I sell it, I'm probably going to put it in a frame first. It is just sort of a figure, a very loose figure, standing against a very loose landscape. I really like how this one, again, I like both sides equally. I have no preference. I think that if somebody owned it, I would even give them the choice of which side they liked more. So this one's pretty cool too. So yeah, just a very loose figure, a very loose landscape, focused on the colors and the transparency of the resin itself. I really like painting in this way because I feel that I can tend to over-focus and put too much detail into painting. A lot of my stuff was, in the past, was based in pointillism and stars, just tiny dots in very specific places. It looks beautiful, but it's not necessarily fun. And since painting is something that I do just as sort of a cathartic process, I do think it's important for it to be something I really enjoy. And resin itself is something I adore, so this is almost like an homage to resin, I would say. Maybe I'll hold this up against the background so you can just actually see it. That's my blood. Gross, right? I cut my finger a while ago in here. So, that's Untitled. The reason it looks kind of weird with the resin, and I actually really liked how that turned out, so I'm keeping it that way. When I was painting it, this was, I think, 2 layers. So I did 1 layer, I popped it out of the mold, I turned it around, and then I painted on the other side. So some of the resin from the second coat came forward onto the first one, on the back of the first one. But I actually like that effect. It makes sort of an interesting, it adds to the landscape, so I'm just going to keep it that. I'm a big believer in happy accidents in painting, especially with such a gestural style. A lot of it is based on what your body does as you're moving around. If you paint in the resin with another color, it'll move the first color, so it's very, like, you really have to kind of fight with it. And this goes back to the sort of anatomical series I've been doing. This one's a brain 1. This was done in a cake pan, so the back of this turned out really frosty. I actually don't like how that turned out, so I'm going to do this one again. So this one's for sale. If anybody wants it, shoot me a message, because I don't like it that much. And I'm going to reattempt it with the same colors and same process, just in a larger and a different mold. This was done in the same cake pan. I use silicone cake pans sometimes. They actually work really well, and they save a lot of time in having to make a mold. This one is a kind of a landscape. I was thinking sort of an apocalyptic city here. So because this one has a much more opaque background, the frosted effect worked, so I'm fine with it in this. So I'm going to stick with using this mold for more opaque background type things. This one is also for sale. I actually did this as part of a demo for a class, and I have some more class demos lying around, so I guess I'll show you those next. I teach resin painting at Redux Contemporary Art Center. I feel super lucky because I'm 23 and I barely graduated from college and I'm already teaching stuff. But I'm mostly self-taught in this technique, so I feel like I'm actually pretty well qualified in knowing like how things go wrong, how to fix them, good ways to do things. And I haven't actually found anywhere else that teaches resin painting, so I guess it might as well be me. So here's some of my class demos. Here's one from the first resin painting class I taught. I think this was last year at some point. It's just clouds. Yep, clouds. This one was a lot of dry pigment mixed into the resin. So this is kind of like an iridescent pigment I used here. Creates a nice effect, especially when you use it with matte pigments around it. It really comes out. So this is resin in a frame panel. A frame panel is basically just, it's a birch panel, like a pre-built birch panel from an art store. Except this is kind of cool because it comes with another little lip on the other side. So you can actually use it as a frame, put something in there, and still have the other lip to use for hanging. That makes it pretty convenient. I did this demo for the same class. I was in a cloudy mood that month, I guess. More clouds. This is a mix of acrylic. Well, this is of course resin. That's the shiny stuff. But it's acrylic and acrylic paint markers. Paint markers is what I used for these little bits. I like one technique I really like exploring is mixing fuzzy areas with very sharp, detailed areas. For my older space paintings, that was a technique that was really kind of like the crux of what I did. I mixed the fuzzy nebula areas with hard stars, and I just really liked the way that looked. So this was just me trying to push that technique onto a different subject matter. I'm pretty happy with it. This is also for sale. Shoot me a message. This is the most recent demo I did. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. Everybody loves a good bridge scene. It's the Cooper River Bridge, named after Arthur Ravenel Jr., elderly statesman. They say that the white lines on the bridge were named for Thomas Ravenel, his grandson, who was busted for cocaine. That is all of Charleston gossip that I know. This was, I think, 3 or 4 layers. This is a combination of iridescent pigments and acrylic and paint marker for the details. Also for sale. Might sell it later because everybody literally loves a Charleston scene. One of the only bad things about being an artist in this amazing city is that pretty much all the work that sells is of historic houses or marshes or like a bird on a marsh by a historic house. So yeah, that's about it. Or the bridge. Another piece, this was from my last class, so it's not super old, it's not super new. This was where I was kind of demonstrating more of a collage technique. So this is a cutout from Nature magazine, it's some kind of molecule. These are like little jellyfish minis I picked up from work. I used these dots with a paint marker. So it was just very experimental and abstract, playing around. If this fit into one of my series, I would say this probably fits into my macro-micro series. That's an older series I did where I sort of combined the idea of how the structure of cells and atoms kind of correlates with the structure of solar systems in the universe, and it's kind of amazing how they all have the same sort of mathematical patterns involved. So this was a very sort of pattern-based idea and series. So now that I guess I've started talking about my older work, I will show you some of it. I'm mostly known around here, at least, not that I'm known, for my space paintings. Last year I had an exhibition of just basically my space paintings. It was called Interspatial, and it was at the library, and some crackhead came and stole 3 of them, so that was in the news. I got him all back, and he went to jail, so it's almost like nothing happened. So I'll show you some of my space paintings now. I don't have a lot of them here, most of them are at home. Basically, I just have so much stuff in the studio that I don't have a lot of room for old paintings. So, yeah, I'll show you those in another video. I'll start with some unfinished ones. This one's unfinished. This was sort of an attempt at reinvigorating an older painting. So I originally painted this in 2011, I didn't like how flat it was. I poured on some resin, put some iridescent pigment on it, and it still needs some more resin. So it's getting there, but it doesn't quite look like I want it to yet, so I'm still working on it. This one's very far from done, but it's going to be Jupiter. Almost there, yeah, Jupiter, no? Alright. This one's also not done. It is Saturn's butt. I saw this picture on APOD. I love APOD, Astronomy Photo of the Day. It is basically my favorite website. I thought this picture is going to have like an aurora on the southern pole of Saturn. I just thought it was so cute that we could see Saturn's butt. That's that. I painted this as a much smaller commission a long time ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I really liked how that turned out, so I decided to do a bigger version in resin. Maybe some close-ups. This is also a mix of acrylic and iridescent pigment. With these space paintings, my technique was much more involved, kind of less free, and I would say a little less fun. So basically what I would do is start with a black or dark background. I like to mix black and gray and blue and purple, because just flat black looks flat. Although that's kind of good because I want it to recede, and the flatter a black area is, the more it's going to recede. But it's got dust on it. Clearly it's been here a while. I usually start with like a red tone, warmer colors to sketch it out because a lot of these images are cooler tones, so they're going to have the cooler tones on top. So I would kind of sketch out the general shape of it, and then I start layering. So it's got dust on it. Clearly it's been here a while. So I start, basically I'll just like paint a little, once I've got like a nice even sort of coat, I guess, I pour on another layer of resin, let that cure for a full 8 hours, or basically I come back the next day. Once that's cured, it's hard. It's basically like it's been varnished. So I'll start painting over it again, repeat the process. I like to do that because it kind of seals in what I painted already. There's no way I can move it. And that just kind of protects what I did underneath while allowing me to do more on top without remotely affecting what was underneath. Because what I like to do is really thin glazes of paint. So I like to see what was in the layer underneath when I paint another layer over it. That way I can get a lot of detail that's really deep into the painting, not just on top. So that's Butterfly Nebula. That looks like a butterfly. Let's see if this will show up at all. This one's Monkey Head Nebula. This one was based on, oh that's cool, you can see the rest of my studio over there instead of the painting. I don't know if this is going to work out. These are honestly like way too shiny to photograph ever. This was actually a very detailed painting even before I put resin on it. It was originally just acrylic on canvas. Then about a year after I was done with it, I was like, well, I've been doing all this resin, I might as well. So I just resined over this one too. And I'm really glad I did because it did improve it a lot, I think. I'm just going to show you these details because I feel like there's no other way for me to do that. So that's Monkey Head Nebula. There's a cool story about that one. There's an astrophotographer from Finland that I follow. His name's JP Metsävaino. And he's so talented. Like, his photographs look like paintings. Like, he's just incredible. What he does is he makes these like 3D GIF images of nebulas where you can kind of see what it would look like from side to side, where it's kind of like moving a little, where you get like an idea of what it would look like spatially, because obviously they're not flat images. These things are millions of miles across. Like, they're bigger than you can even imagine. So just helps me get an idea of what they actually look like, so I can incorporate that into the depth of my painting. So he did a photograph of the monkey head nebula that I was really captivated by. I'd never seen that nebula before. I sent him an email asking if I could use his image as a reference, and he said I could. So thanks, JP. So let's show you some more stuff. You might have been wondering what that thing over there was at the beginning of the video. This is one that I play around with whenever I'm bored and I'm sick of what else I'm working on. This is kind of like a continual work in progress, and I don't really have any plans for it, not really intending anything. It's just something for me to paint on, essentially. Which kind of makes it really fun, in a way. I like how this face right here turned out. Reminds me of Anton LaVey or something. There's kind of a sheep guy over here, his brain's spilling out. I don't know what's going on. This guy's like upset, probably because he's covered in brains. I really don't know what's going on in this painting. It's very, very random. That's a little self-portrait on the left over there. So, yeah, this is just playing around with paint, playing around with ideas, especially playing around with figurative work, because I don't tend to do that much anymore. Something you might recognize. This is not something I designed. It is actually a commission. If you're a fan of the Stone Roses, this is the cover for Fool's Gold. And it was originally painted by John Squire, but I received the commission basically asking me to paint a couple of album covers for one of my dad's friends. So of course I was happy to do that. I wasn't like, no, I will not. So I actually really love the Stone Roses, so this worked out great. I would totally listen to the song while painting it. Not on loop, that would drive me nuts. So I think that's about done, yeah. It doesn't look exactly like the original. It's got a bit more of my own spin to it, which I prefer. I hope that Paul is okay with that. This is all just acrylic on canvas. I have a lot of fun with that because I haven't worked in just acrylic in a while. I used a lot of polymer gel medium with this though to make it nice and shiny. So, still got lots of texture. Tons of brushwork. It's just layers upon layers of brushes. It's almost like pointillism but with a much bigger brush essentially. So this is the reason I'm here today, other than the class I just taught. This is also an album cover for the same person. This is the single cover to Invincible by Muse, who have been my favorite band since I was 13, and I'm 23, so that's great. I really like this. Basically, the album art for this era of Muse really inspired me in general, just like the Nebula floating images, things made out of space. So I think I might sort of take what I've learned from painting this and take it a little further. It's not quite done though. I'm probably going to finish it tonight. That's, again, why I'm here. And if I do finish it tonight, maybe I'll film it. So, there you go. I'm really happy with the colors in it. I started painting this while I was working on the CMYK palette, so I decided to kind of push that, make it a little more CMYK than the original, just so it fits into my body work and also just keeps in line with what's on my mind anyway. I don't like painting things that are just a waste of paint, you know. I always like to learn something from the process, so I'm definitely getting something out of these commissions. And they're going to go to China, so that's pretty cool. Paintings all the way over to China. Not looking forward to that shipping. I guess I could show you some other things, but I don't really have a whole lot here. Like I said, most of my paintings are at home right now because I don't have enough room for stuff that I'm not actually working on to just hang out in here. Maybe I'll show you a couple prints now. Hold on. So this guy and I guess like 10 more of them are on sale. I did this as a giveaway for the people that came to my first show, Interspatial, the one that, you know, someone came and stole a bunch of stuff from. So these are going to be $10 each. It is a block print, and I just like cut little dots. It's the Earth, obviously. I like this one. This is basically a block print version of a painting I did called Space Debris. And if you haven't thought about space debris, maybe you should, because humans are so awful that we're actually polluting outside our planet, not just on it. Like, there's so many pieces of satellites that they're crashing into each other, making more pieces of satellites, to the point where we might not actually be able to leave the planet unless we start cleaning it up, because there's so much stuff that will just crash into our spaceships and crash into our satellites. So that's terrible, and nobody thinks about it. If you like Doctor Who, it's a TARDIS. I really love Doctor Who. I'm sure that's a surprise, considering I paint space. I have like 5 more of these, and I guess they're like $10. I will actually put some effort into printing it though. I think this was a test print, so you can see it's all wonky. And okay, at this point, I'm just kind of walking around my studio, grabbing old paintings to show you guys. So, super organized. This one I was doing at the same time as I did another painting that I've already sold. It was basically the streetlights of the US, essentially. So it was like a painting of the Earth focusing on North and South America, but all the detail was rendered through light yellow dots, which represented essentially the population density. So like all the cities were really bright, and I really liked how that kind of, like all the highways were really bright. It kind of ended up looking like a spider web. It's like a mini version of that, which just kind of focuses on the spider web element of city structure. I don't know what this is. I think I was just kind of bored one day. It's all just marker. Yep, paint marker on panel. More faces again. This one, again, I don't really know what it is. It's just abstract. Somebody said it looks like a lemon, so it's a lemon. Yep, lemon. Lemon. Like a planet. Maybe like abstract Saturn. I was just focusing on that yellow color. I like yellow and white and gray. This one's a star. I'm quite happy with this one, actually. It's got like some coronas and everything. This was all gel pen, actually. I really like working in marker, especially when markers and pens. When I spend so long painting, it's nice to have something that I can just kind of dash off. And if it's on a panel, it still ends up a finished piece. So that's fun. This is just a little star field. So it's a little globular star cluster. I didn't use any kind of reference for this, because at this point I've painted maybe 5 or 6 of these and I know what they look like. And I have a lot of reference books that show many different globular star clusters, and they all kind of look like a bunch of stars that gravitate towards a center, because that's what they are. So, star cluster. This was paint marker and gel pen. I used to do pointillism and stars using dotting tools, and I used to use just paintbrushes. I have to say the brushes work the worst. Dotting tools are okay. They kind of work, you know, they were nail art dotting tools. So they work exactly the same way you'd think those are. You pick up a little bit of paint and dot it on. I find that works better if you're using paint with a lot of really heavy body medium and you actually want it to have texture. But if you want it to just be a flat little dot, a paint marker is going to be better, because you can really control the size and shape of the dot. It'll stay round. When I was using a brush for stars, my first few star paintings, like, I cannot even look at them anymore, because the stars are like dashes, basically. And it kind of makes me think about Seurat and how all of his paintings weren't really dots, they were mostly dashes. And it makes me wonder how intentional that was, because it gets really tiring to really gently dot on paint. You end up making dashes the faster you go. So I think, yeah, something I thought about. So that's my studio. I think that's all I really have to say to you guys while I'm in here. It's nice to meet you. My name is Alizey. If you have any questions, please send me a comment and I'll make another video answering them. Because I'd really like to start vlogging about my studio. I like being in my studio, and my friends always tell me that they have more fun watching me than actually making stuff. So hopefully you guys will have fun watching me too.